This episode of New Politics was released on the 14th of February, 2026, and produced on the lands of the Wangal and Gadigal people.
The Liberal Party has got a new leader in Angus Taylor. Will it make any difference? Probably not, especially if people start to remember all the corruption that he seemed to be involved with when he was last in government, especially on water licences and companies set up in the Cayman Islands. The Liberal Party has got a whole lot of other problems going on, and that's the main reason why it's polling at just 15% in the latest opinion polls, and it really needs to start changing its tune completely if it ever wants to get back on track. I'm Eddie Djokovic.
I'm David Lewis. All of this is coming up in this big episode of New Politics.
And just a reminder that New Politics is produced by independent media. You can listen in, share, subscribe and support New Politics at Patreon and Substack. It's just $5 per month. Or you can donate directly at our website at newpolitics.com.au. And of course, all of this is a good way to support independent journalism.
He's got the job his CV always promised. A Rhodes Scholar, Angus Taylor, now leader of a party at its lowest ebb.
It is clear we are running out of time.
Now in a rush to revive the party of Menzies and Howard from near ruin, targeting the cost of living, home ownership and migration.
We are not seeking to be one nation light.
But whether Angus Taylor has the powers of persuasion and communication remain a live question. He's had his troubles over the years, ensnared in controversy after attending a briefing with environment officials about the illegal clearing of grasslands he owned with his brother.
I make absolutely no apology for standing up for farmers in my region, and that includes me.
Despite his early promise, Angus Taylor has become a target-rich opponent for the government. The opposition's fortunes now rely on its new leader transforming himself into its saviour.
The Liberal Party's in a lot of trouble at the moment, and David, I know that we've been saying this for some time, for a long time actually, but this time I think it's in a real lot of trouble. And they've had a good go at blowing themselves up, and we've tried pretty hard over the past few years to do that, but they're doing it all themselves, and I think this time they might have really succeeded. And the catalyst for all of this was the gun restriction laws, which after the Bondi terror attacks in December last year, I think that most reasonable people would have agreed to. And I think that it would have been a good thing to do in the interests of the community. But the National Party decided that it would take a stand about their support for this legislation. They didn't want to see any watering down of the gun legislation at all. And the end result was that 3 National Party shadow ministers offered their resignations to the leader, and that was accepted by the Liberal Party leader, Sussan Ley, and then the rest of the National Party shadow ministers resigned as well. And this type of action, well, it was never going to be about the legislation itself that caused this split. I think that was just the excuse. And Sussan Ley has never really been accepted as the leader of the opposition or as the leader of the Liberal Party. And this is how it's all playing out now. This is what we're seeing at the moment. And generally within politics, it doesn't matter who the political party is. We just want to see a level of professionalism in how members of parliament behave and how organisations operate. But this is pretty much amateur hour, David, and it's going to cause a lot of splintering on the Conservative side of politics. And it's hard to know how or who is going to pick up these splinters.
I've been comparing the current malaise of the Liberal Party to the situation of the United Australia Party in 1943. You had a very dominant Labor Party with one of the great Prime Ministers, John Curtin, leading the Labor Party, and a pretty useful wartime cabinet. It was all Labor. Curtin refused to work with the Liberal Party, probably because he knew that the Liberal Party was dying. In 43, though, there were a couple of key differences. One, you still had good people. Menzies was part of the UAP, and he restructures it to become the Liberal Party. But they had figures, and you had other figures who would go on to be cabinet members. You have a pool of people who are willing to join the party. not just because, too, and I think this has got to be remembered, not just because suddenly the Liberal Party or the United Australia Party has become a winnable proposition. That's certainly part of it, but it's because there's a foundation that they can build on. And so you have your Haslucks, you get Casey coming back from Bengal, you get Shane Paltridge in Western Australia in the Senate, you get all these, Enid Lyons, wife of the deceased Joe Lyons, coming back in. I don't see anyone from your typical traditional Liberal constituencies clamouring to join even a revived Liberal Party. Some of these figures were national figures. Paul Hasluck was a senior public servant and a historian of some note. Casey had been a politician before. He'd been treasurer in the Lyons government, etc. Worked very closely with Bruce in the Bruce government. He came back to become, I think, at one point the longest serving Minister for Foreign Affairs, in which he did a decent job. You had people like John Spender, whose granddaughter Allegra is in the parliament. You had a whole range of capable and energetic and intelligent people, even if you didn't agree with them. They were people who you knew could run the country properly. If we look at the last few Liberal attorneys general, Michaelia Cash didn't even have Australian qualifications. She'd studied in England and had done the test to make sure that her qualifications were recognised. And when you look at the number of senior lawyers around, none of them were prepared to give up their practice to become Attorney General, whereas there'd always been that jostling. And Attorney General, Foreign Affairs, Prime Minister and Treasurer are the ones where Bob Carr never wanted to be Prime Minister, for example, or Premier of New South Wales. He wanted to be Foreign Affairs Minister and get 6 months at it, which was one of the great tragedies. Yeah, Attorneys General, I won't go through them, but they felt that they had reached the pinnacle of their career, really, by becoming Attorney General and helping to shape the law of the country. Keating saw himself as Treasurer first and then became Prime Minister. But there's no one on the right openly stating, oh, I'd like to be one of those roles. Malcolm Turnbull, from about the time he was 25, basically said, I'm going to become Prime Minister one day, and had the ambition to be the youngest Prime Minister. He didn't get there. And he didn't
I can tell you that every classroom in Australia from grade 1 to grade 7 or whatever,
sure.
like every kid says, there's always one or two kids that say, oh, look, I'm going to be Prime Minister one day, and none of them.
For sure.
There's only
but
one.
Not Liberal Prime Minister.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. Like, it's not that we're lacking candidates, and it's not even that we're lacking good candidates, but the Liberal Party is. And I think that's the big problem. There's no one in Parliament at the moment who's a credible Prime Minister. To my knowledge, there could be a quiet backbencher who will grab the imagination of the Liberal voting constituency. But I think the good people have either decided not to go into politics at all or become independents, particularly Teal independents, or moved into the Green Party, the Greens.
Oh, I guess that's what the point is, because it always depends on who puts their hand up for pre-selection, who wants to be actually in that party, and in this case specifically the Liberal Party. But the Conservative side of politics, I think that they've had a lot of problems for some time. And even when they were in government for 9 years, between 2013 and 2022, and even when they won 3 elections in a row. And that's partially what the problem is, that if you're in government and if you've won 3 elections in a row, well, you gloss over all of those problems and you think that you're doing okay. And that's sort of axiomatic, but it's not necessarily the case. And it has happened before, all of this political parties falling apart, and it will probably happen to the current Labor government at some point in the future. But for the Liberal Party, well, they can only fill in all of those positions based on who's actually in Parliament. And then, well, they did try to get some more favourable people into Parliament at the last election, but those people didn't get in because the overall Liberal Party just performed so poorly. And then there's flow-on effects from that. The less success that a party has, the less chances it has of attracting good quality candidates or getting good quality pre-selections happening. And when you've got a shadow ministry of 32, that's 32 places that you've got to fill, and you've only got 53 Liberal MPs and senators to choose from, well, it's almost like everyone wins a prize sort of situation. And you end up with people in shadow ministry positions who are either too inexperienced or too incompetent, and that is not a good recipe for success in itself. Like, they were having these problems when they were in government, they just didn't have good people to fill those positions. And sure, they had the numbers there, but this time they haven't got the numbers or the quality of people there.
They wasted their time in opposition. I said at the time Tony Abbott was a terrible opposition leader, and everyone's saying, no, he's great. The seeds were sown then. Instead of stepping back, and this is what I think the Greens might be doing. We don't hear much from Larissa Waters. I think the Greens struggle to get media coverage anyway. But the Greens have been very unusually quiet. And I think that they're doing the hard work of what happened in the last election. We got the numbers, but we didn't get the focus on the numbers, which required, and we lose the leader, and we lose seats in the lower house, and we don't gain anything in the Senate despite. So I think that they're working on how do you fix that at the moment, which is the right thing to do. Abbott roars in like a lion, like March, says no to everything, creates chaos, and then when he gets into government, they haven't done anything. They don't know how to govern, and so they just continue the pattern of opposition. The moderates see that this doesn't work, so try and bring Turnbull in. Turnbull scrapes in at the next election. They should have lost there, really, and had Malcolm Turnbull, who I think would have at least tried to sort things out. Whether he could have done it, that's a whole different story. When they finally lose, they don't sit down then. Dutton tries the Abbott approach of just saying no to everybody and being visible. And that internal Liberal review showed too that he was let down by a shadow cabinet. At least some members weren't prepared to do the hard work of policy development and selling difficult policies. Even if they're good policies, the grind of policy work is difficult. And so you get that. And now we're in the stage where Dutton is suing the Liberal Party. Could you imagine Fraser suing the Liberal Party? And he was absolutely excoriated by the Liberal Party. They barely acknowledge his existence. Second longest or third longest serving Prime Minister after the war. Hawke, Howard, Fraser. And I know that some of you listening are frothing up at the mention of Fraser, and that's perfectly valid. But the party was taken over by a group of people who didn't understand politics, didn't understand governance, and didn't understand what the people of Australia wanted. Thought that when we eventually get the benefits of neoliberalism, it's been 40 years, any day now, I think Jesus has them in his backpack. Any day now it's going to happen. We're all going to be rich. We're all going to be driving 3 cars. We're all going to have middle management jobs. And it didn't happen. And the party needs to work out. And as rightly said, it is an urban party. And it's lost its urban constituency.
One Nation now with 2 big personalities.
I want to thank Pauline for basically giving me this opportunity.
Pauline and Barnaby, the new political power couple, out to rule the right, promising no bull.
One Nation has an honesty about it. It's authentic.
An announcement made in his New England electorate on community radio.
We intend to turn this country around to make it great again.
After weeks of speculation, Barnaby's choice, defecting from the Nationals, becoming the first One Nation MP in the House of Representatives since Pauline Hanson in 1998. But at the next election, he'll run for the Senate.
We're going to be the A team, I tell you what, going into the next election. Be prepared.
This next issue is not directly related to the Liberal Party, although it probably will become directly related to the Liberal Party. But Barnaby Joyce has defected to the One Nation Party, and there's probably a wide range of issues to consider here. Now, One Nation might be a protest vote and polling very well in the opinion polls at the moment, and that's relatively speaking, but it's still a culture of complaint, and I think that culture of complaint can only get you so far. Although it seemed to work very well for Donald Trump in the United States, but I'm just not sure how successful this culture of complaint can be in Australia. And the general consensus is that a political party cannot go from 0 seats, and One Nation didn't win any seats at all at the last election in the lower house. It's got one now through the defection of Barnaby Joyce, but essentially it can't go from 0 seats to winning enough seats to either win government, which would be 76 seats, or win enough seats to form some sort of splintered coalition that it could go on to form a government. And there isn't the structural support or the finances to run candidates in every seat on a comprehensive level. But with the move of Barnaby Joyce over to One Nation, Well, I think that will probably bring along the support of Gina Rinehart over to One Nation as well, more than likely through financial support. And the three of those, and that's Barnaby Joyce, Gina Rinehart, Pauline Hanson, they just haven't got very much political nous. And they're a little bit like Donald Trump. They're politically dumb, but I think politically dangerous. I'm not saying they're stupid people, but I just think that they're politically dumb. And Pauline Hanson and Barnaby Joyce, they run that nutcase brand of politics that attracts the call a spade sort of brigade. Again, I'm not saying that they're stupid, but that's the sort of politics that they attract. And it's that Trumpian drain the swamp tactic. But it's about 10 years too late. And I feel that we've already had that experience in Australia with Scott Morrison, maybe Tony Abbott to a lesser extent, and that didn't work out so well for Australia or ultimately the Liberal parties. And I wouldn't write off One Nation completely. They are polling 22% according to the recent polls, and that's actually more than the Liberal Party, but they just seem to be cannibalising the vote from the Conservative side of politics, and especially the Liberal Party rather than the Labor Party itself. And I think the government itself needs to be wary of One Nation, and they shouldn't be writing them off just because Pauline Hanson is the leader and is a bit of a political fool. I don't think they should write off One Nation just because of that. So I think, well, to use that old Howardism, they should be alert but not alarmed about One Nation.
I can't see One Nation winning very many inner city seats.
Well, they're certainly not going to win the seat of Graindler.
No, they're not going to win Graindler. They're not going to win Watson. They're not going to win things like Kooyong or Wentworth.
Well, the point is that if the Liberal Party cannot win any of those inner city seats, like they don't hold any seats within the Sydney Harbour region, if the Liberal Party can't win those seats, One Nation's hasn't got any chance at all.
No, none at all. One Nation could win the outer suburban seats, maybe, and I say that, and by that, the semi-rural seats on the end of Melbourne, on the end of Sydney, on the end of Brisbane. They've got a bit more of a chance with the decline of the seeming decline of the National Party. There's a certain hold that the National Party has in those seats. The reason Barnaby Joyce kept winning wasn't because of Barnaby's extreme competence and sane approach to politics, but that he was a member of the National Party.
Oh, that's right. Well, New England is National Party heartland.
National Party, yeah. Earl Page, the National Party had 5 leaders from 1920 to 1983 or something. And then there was a small break, and then Fisher came in and he held it. And since then, it's been a revolving door of not many people of substance. If you look at Page, who was problematic but a person of substance, McEwen was one of the most substantial politicians we ever had. Tim Fisher was probably the only morally decent man in the Howard government. I'm prepared to be corrected on that, but there weren't many of them. And then you get a revolving door of, and when we're looking at Matt Canavan as possibly being a leader, it's time to pack up and go home, let alone Boyce, let alone Barnaby Joyce actually being leader.
Oh, for sure. But essentially it's going to be those sort of seats that One Nation will probably pick up if they do pick up seats. But they're not going to get anywhere near 76. They might, who knows? The election is still over 2 years away, so who knows what will happen in 2 years' time. But they're probably not going to pick up any seats off the Labor Party. If they do pick up seats, it would be off the National Party.
Yeah, and they're not going to impinge on Greens territory either. Nobody's moving from Greens to One Nation or vice versa. And it's hard. The Greens, again, is harder to pick. I think it's pretty safe to say that One Nation is at least 4 cycles away from troubling government in any kind of way. And by that, I'm even being part of a coalesced opposition. And of course, anything can happen.
Well, I guess if the Liberal Party no longer exists, and people on the right will vote for someone. So that's that's one potential. But just heading back to the Liberal Party.
I will be spending the next couple of weeks thanking the amazing people of Farrer and expressing my gratitude to them for the honour of representing them for 25 years. Shortly thereafter, I will be tendering my resignation to the Speaker. I'm not sure what comes next for me. I look forward to stepping away completely and comprehensively from public life, to spend time with my family, to reconnect with my enduring passion, aviation, which taught me if I had an ego, I'd be dead. It's been quite useful in politics. And finally, as some of you know, I was part of the early punk rock movement in Canberra. I will continue to find wisdom in one of punk's defining themes, a fearless and honest belief in yourself.
There's also the question of whether a new leader for the Liberal Party will make much of a difference or not. And there's been speculation about Sussan Ley's position ever since she was appointed. So I think it's from day one. It's been the longest speculation about a leadership challenge ever. And she just hasn't been given much of a chance. And I always suspected that she was going to be a bit mediocre anyway. And if you can't control a party that's much smaller than it used to be, and in a state of shock after such a crushing election loss in 2025, a leader that is competent, they'd be able to pick up all of those pieces, probably recognise that their job is not to actually lead the party into government, but to pick up the pieces, rebuild the party, get it into an electorally competitive position at the next election. They probably should have started with this approach in 2022 under Peter Dutton, but it's hard to be the leader and not be ambitious and think that you're going to actually win the next election. I guess psychologically you just have to keep thinking that, but they're actually in a worse position than they were before 2022. And they're trying to build a house that's made out of straw that can easily fall away. I'm not even sure if they've got the plans out for this straw house, but it's like a straw house that can easily blow away. And it's almost like a rerun of the Liberal Party in 1994, except you refer to 1944. I'm going not so far back, but 1994, except it's about 10 times worse, where they did have that revolving leadership door. They went from Andrew Peacock to John Hewson and then to Alexander Downer, who must be probably the worst opposition leader ever, before finally settling on John Howard. And as they say, the rest is history, but it's 10 times worse than 1994.
But you had Howard and you had Peacock and you had Hewson and you had people of substance.
Yeah, well, that's right. And they've got no one like John Howard to turn to. And I'm sure at that time we probably thought John Howard was insignificant and what did he say, Lazarus with a triple bypass or whatever it was. But they did turn to him and the rest is history. But who have they got now? Angus Taylor. So just that they've got...
I wish I could remember who drew it, but in the cartoon display at Old Parliament House in Canberra, when Howard won in 96, the frame on the left had 1986 at the top and a guy hitting the table laughing, and the paper said John Howard will be Prime Minister in 10 years. And then in the next frame, it was 1996, and it's the same guy, but he's crying, hating that John Howard will be Prime Minister in 10 years.
Well, you never know what any of these people are going to be like in the future as well. Angus Taylor could end up being the next John Howard
People
or Andrew
grow
Hastings.
into the role.
They could, based on what we see now. It's just who is this person going to be? And sure, politics is like that, where you look on the horizon and there's nothing there, but then all of a sudden it sneaks up on you and there is the next John Howard.
Yeah, and we get back to the core business of criticising Conservative governments or non-Labor governments. That's a joke, by the way.
It's not so much the leadership issue, it's just that electorally, they're in a 10 times worse position than they were in 1994.
It doesn't seem to be... The people who have grand overarching visions have the wrong vision. It's still about neoliberalism and austerity and kicking into the poor and the migrants and the people who we shouldn't be kicking into. It's... What we've found with the neoliberals and the libertarians is that they don't know how to build, so they wreck. And that was Tony Abbott's big problem. He could wreck stuff, he could lay things to waste, but government isn't about that. It's Donald Trump's problem. Wrecking is easy. Building and maintaining and supporting is hard. And that's where I think the Liberal Party has to sit down and have a good hard look at itself.
Oh, for sure. And a lot of people they've actually said to us, well, come on, you shouldn't be so upset about the demise of the Liberal Party if that's what it comes to. But, that's true. We probably shouldn't be, but we're very helpful characters and we're always here to help the Liberal Party. If they need any of our support, you can always just reach out. But the problem is that there is a political vacuum there. And if there's a political vacuum, well, someone comes in to fill that space. And it's not going to be all by one nation. I think it's the Labor government sees a space there, and then it thinks, well, we'll fill up that space as well. And it becomes more right-wing than it actually is. It will go there because it sees a space there. And it's already got all of these other sectors that are behind it on the left. So it's thinking, well, they're not going to go anywhere else. So let's see if we can pick up some movement on the right. And Anthony Albanese has always said that he wants to position the Labor Party as the natural party of government. And if that's what your goal is, well, you leave behind your traditional territory. You keep it on course, but you sort of don't concentrate so much on that. You leave the Labor base behind and the unions as well. And most Labor Party MPs probably wouldn't know what to do if they came across a real unionist or a real union member. They'd probably ask them for a donation rather than asking them what they thought about Labor Party policy. And I just don't think that the Labor Party should be too complacent about what's happening to the Liberal Party. It's happened to the Labor Party so many times in the past where they've been decimated. Everyone's been saying that it's the end of the party, they're not going to come back. And as recently as 2019, when Albanese came into the position of opposition leader, they said, well, Labor's going to be out of office for a long, long time. And we also have to remember that the Labor Party's only been in office for a third of the time since Federation, and the other time has been held by Conservatives. But for the Liberal Party itself, well, they just have to start taking the hard medicine. And they should have started taking that a long, long time ago. They have to work out a suitable plan, realise that it's going to take a long time to implement that plan, and just stick to the plan. And that's all easier said than done. But when the Liberal Party and the National Party combined, if they've been overtaken in the opinion polls by a party that's led by someone of the calibre of Pauline Hanson, well, you just know that you've got a lot of problems on your hand, and you just have to sort them out very, very, very quickly.
Yeah. It's insane. And as a historian, it's upsetting to see a party had 70 years of influence in Australia go down in such a way. But I suppose that's how all parties go down. They lose all the good people. And by good, that's not an endorsement of policy or anything, but I think the mistake that political people make is to assume that the other side is inherently bad and incompetent, when often they're very competent and very smart. I think, and Labor needs a good opposition. Hewson and Peacock and Howard held Labor to account and got arguably better policy through being a constructive opposition rather than just saying no to everything. Sussan Ley has made I thought she started off fairly well, but she made some ridiculous statements in the last few months that showed that she's not really sure why she's there. Now, to be fair, she's probably not really sure why she's there. She was the last person standing after a slaughter at the election. This is where they should be sitting down, shutting up, going into the back rooms. And they have attempted that, and it turned out badly. Dutton suing them or threatening to sue them. Just absolute idiocy. Sure, fight and argue and defend your legacy and all of that, but not in public. The Liberal Party always did it. Labor, as someone said, Labor bled in public, and the factional wars were open and bloody and brutal. Liberals skulked and kept it quiet. But that's possibly why they were always seen as the better management, because all the fighting was done offside. And then when they finally came through, everyone was battered, bruised, bandaged, hurt badly, which is Labor National Conference was supposed to be, and caucus too. Do all your arguing behind doors and present a united front. So yeah, the future of the Liberal Party, I think, is going to be a rearrangement, but still not easy. And I guess do they want to rip the Band-Aid off, or are they going to take it off slowly so you feel every bit of skin coming with it? Time will tell.
The media has already started polishing up Angus Taylor as the one who's got the right economic credentials and the right leadership skills to get the Liberal Party back on track. But these are economic credentials that have never been evident before. His first talking point after he became the leader was to talk about wanting to stop bad immigration, and he didn't actually have to say it, but that means restricting immigration to white people only, and only the people that the Liberal Party approves of. So it's not off to a good start, but when your real competition is one nation and not the government, These are the things that you have to do. But it also shows just how far the Liberal Party has fallen, and it's fallen in a big, big way. That's it for this episode of New Politics. Thanks for listening in. And if you'd like to support our style of journalism and commentary, please make a donation at our website at newpolitics.com.au. We don't beg, plead, beseech or gaslight you about journalism coming to an end. We just keep it very simple. If you like what we do, please send some support our way. It keeps our commitment to independent journalism ticking along. I'm Eddie Djokovic. Thanks for listening in, and it's goodbye to our listeners.
I'm David Lewis. We'll see you next time.